Hello everybody and welcome back. And today I've got a replay for all of you from FB 2000 who is playing a Yubari. And you're probably looking at this and going, a Yubari? Why would you do a replay of this ship? She's terrible. Well, she used to be. Recently, as of patch 0.5.7, she's gotten a new modification, a new upgrade modification. And, well, she performs significantly differently after this new upgrade modification compared to before. Also, she also happens to be now back on sale on the NA server for quite a low cost. So is she worth getting? Well, let me run through this entire battle and hopefully we'll figure it all out. So as of patch 0.5.7, the Yubari along with the Iwaki Elf and I believe the Katori, even though I don't have a Katori, have gotten access to a brand new first slot modification, which provides minus 40% main gun dispersion. So that means the Yubari at her maximum gun range only has a dispersion of 73 meters, which is incredibly tight. And as you'll see during the course of this replay, the shots now, unlike in the past, where the Yubari's guns were very bad, now you pretty much aim them anywhere that you want them to, and the shells are pretty much going to go there. This combined with the fact that the Yubari has always been a rather agile and pretty fast ship, and the fact that her torpedoes pack an absolute punch and they really hit really hard for tier 4, makes her a rather interesting ship to think about potentially getting for the fun purposes or just for the sake of clubbing seals if that is what you're inclined to do. As you can tell, pretty much if you aimed your shots correctly, you're going to land the majority of the shells you fire. In most cases, 4 shots are going to lead to 4 hits. Now, speaking of sort of having this really tight dispersion of what it could be useful for, of course it's useful in battle. Like, you will do better as you will land more hits and do more damage. But I feel like one of the main things that the Yubari can accomplish now that she wasn't able to do before is to really act as that kind of training ship. A ship that allows you to really work on your aim, to really try to perfect it. Like, if I leave here and if I aim here, where are my shots going to go? And you can make those adjustments. Look, if a ship is backing up at this kind of angle, where do I need to lead in order to get exactly the right number of hits in the right areas? And you can only really do that with ships that have very tight dispersion. If you have ships that are like battleships where you fire and the shells are all over the place, then of course you're not really going to be able to use that as a training ship. So that is something that you can definitely now consider in the Yubari. Also keep an eye on the shell dispersions. Sometimes you'll see like this one. Look at that. That actually looks like one shell, but it's actually 2. They're so tightly grouped together now. And of course, as you can tell, the damage is very consistent. Every salvo that gets put out is pretty much going to land for a solid chunk of damage. Okay, so let's go back to looking at the map, and the initial decision by FB2000 to go south into the islands is actually a pretty solid decision because the Yubari is one of those ships that are fast enough and agile enough, and she can go in there and sort of mix it up with destroyers. She's also now got really reliable guns, so that destroyers that in the past might have sort of laughed at the Yubari are now going to get hit really hard by her very precise shells. Now, if she runs into something bigger, let's say a battleship or a larger cruiser, and she can't really kill them, let's say, effectively with her gun, she's always got those amazing torpedoes to go to. And the Yubari's torpedoes really hurt when you're down at these lower tiers. The Yubari almost, now that I think about it, is almost like an ideal training ship for the Japanese cruiser line. You have a ship that is still fragile, and most of the Japanese cruisers are, except for the tier 10 one, and you don't really want to be showing broadsides, but you still have to learn exactly what time you want to show that broadside to maybe get torpedoes out, or maybe to bring your maximum firepower to bear. So I think that the Yubari almost is a good training ship to teach you that particular Japanese cruiser playstyle. Now that the team south has completely sort of pushed on through and the enemy opposition have been wiped, it's not a bad idea for the team on FB side to just push through and head for a cap. This is sort of where I question FB's decision a little bit to head back to his own cap. If you take a look at the map right now, FB's team's got a destroyer, a cruiser, two battleships pushing through the southern island. Had they been there, that would have been an additional cruiser there, and the enemy team only appeared to have one cruiser opposing that push. Right now, that FB sort of gone away, it's basically only a destroyer and a single cruiser trying to fight another cruiser, and that's not really a super advantageous matchup, shall we say. Had he been there, I think he could have lent his fire support, and I think the enemy cruiser would have gone down very quickly, and immediately they would have been able to step on and apply cap pressure. And by applying cap pressure this early, it would force certain ships on the enemy team to potentially having turned around to go deal with the issue. And what would have happened is, had his team reacted the right way, they would have pincered the enemy team into that sort of northeastern corner around sort of A9, A10, B9, B10 area. And had the enemy team sort of been sandwiched there, they likely would have been obliterated very, very quickly. But hindsight is 2020, and so there's no way to look at a replay and criticize what was done. I mean, that's happened, and I can't really change it. So taking a look at what's happened so far, I mean, FB comes back, helps his team kill the enemy destroyer, which is eliminates the ability for the enemy team to stealth cap, so that's good. And then goes to help engage this massed amount of ships. What you will see is, this is sort of the Yubari thing, is you still do require cover. So that means you ideally still want to hide behind islands and sling some shots over the island. The Yubari, even though her guns now are a lot better, she is still a very fragile ship. I mean, a battleship looks at you the wrong way and is able to land hits on you. Those are generally going to hurt quite a bit. Generally speaking, for ships trying to shoot the Yubari, I would even say that ships like the Wyoming are more effective than ships like the Miyogi. You simply have more shells in the air, and more shells equals greater chances of hitting, which actually is something that generally Yubaris don't like, to see too many battleship shells flying at them. Alright, how do you deal with battleships in a Yubari? Because that will be a question you have. The guns, they're much better. You're able to land consistently more hits, but damage is still kind of meh. So what do? I think against battleships, what you're going to mostly see is either a very, very good use of torpedoes, meaning popping up from behind cover and surprise with these amazing torpedoes you have, or now that you have really good dispersion, another thing that I see happening, and it's something that you should practice, is targeting individual zones and setting them on fire. So every single ship in the game has 4 sectors for fire. 1 on the stern, 2 in the middle, and 1 on the bow area. With very, very, let's say, random dispersion, it's hard to target individual zones. But with very, very, very tight dispersion, what you could do is you could aim an area, set the stern on fire, set another fire in the midsection, then try to aim for a bow fire. If you do this correctly, what will happen is, after you set 2 fires, most battleship captains are going to hit their R key, pop their damage control party, and put out those fires. And then what you do is you simply repeat the process and then make the battleships burn for the full duration of the fire, netting yourself absolutely huge amounts of fire damage. And maybe if they're close enough, you could even try using torpedoes and getting flooding plus fire damage, because those two combined are absolutely deadly. So if you watch what FP2000 is doing here, he set that fire, but he's not really adjusting his aim. He's keeping the aim at roughly the same point, which means the shells are going to drop at roughly the same point, and you're unlikely to start a second fire. What you want to do is make the adjustment, lead it a little differently, hit a different part of the ship, set that on fire, and really, really piss that other battleship off. Still, with that one fire, he's able to do reasonable amounts of damage to that Miyogi, because the Miyogi did burn the repair early. And so, of course, yeah, with like 1,000 HP left, this should be a kill for FP2000, right? Should be. I mean, it's 1,000 HP. One salvo should... No, never mind. Never mind. I think the last 3 kills have all been denied with other ships just coming at the last moment and landing that killing blow. But that's okay. I mean, FB is doing all the damage, so that's all that matters. Continue to fire at the Wyoming with HE, and as long as you're able to land multiple hits, the damage is very, very, very consistent. And of course, you set those super annoying fires. Yeah, and you can tell the dispersion is significantly better, much more usable now. Okay, so FB goes bow in, trying to, I guess, close the range on the Wyoming in order to bring the torpedoes to bear. Yubari torpedoes, while they do great damage, the range is not amazing, so I can see why this is a necessary course of action to try to close that distance down. Although, I think personally at this particular point, I think what I would have done is would have gone. Whoa, that dispersion was a little crazy. Oh, and I think that's another thing. It's like if you lead completely the wrong way, the dispersion still is a little crazy. Ooh, there's that super tight one again. I think what could have been done is like set fires here, wait for the battleship to go broadside again if it does, and then start to pound away with armor piercing. Because armor piercing against battleships, as long as they're broadside, as long as you get penetration, you do better damage than with high explosive. So. Still HEing away. Now, of course, is an ideal time to be using HE because bow on. Torpedoes hit. Good solid damage there. Wyoming definitely in trouble because burned the repair kit earlier to deal with the fires. Now is flooding plus being on fire. Take a look at the HP ticking away. There's no way to recover from that. That is hundreds of HP per second. So, FB 2000 finally secures kill number 1. And it's on a battleship. Enemy team have gone back. They have remedied whatever was the threat to their cap. And so you take a look at the current situation. And things aren't looking too bad. Still 3 battleships and a carrier and FB 2000 in a Yubari. And then on the enemy team there is a carrier, 2 battleships, and 2 cruisers. So things aren't looking, except for that Wyoming taking a big hit there. Oh, Wyoming does kill their Furutaka, so that's good. And, of course, I think that might not be good for... Yeah, there's a torpedo hit on the Wyoming. See, and that's the thing. Like, Japanese cruisers, right? There's always going to be that playstyle. It's like guns plus torpedoes. You just have to find the right time to get torpedoes off sort of sneakily, and hopefully you'll end up bagging yourself the kill. Alright, so things looking a little bit more dicey because I don't think that was the only battleship that died. Another one died as well. So we're talking 1 battleship, 1 carrier, an FB 2000 in a Yubari against 2 more remaining battleships, a carrier, and a Karlsruhe. Karlsruhe is not that big of a threat. What I think I would have done at this particular point in time is probably try to kill off that Wyoming. So that Wyoming's popped his repair kit, so probably try to go after the Wyoming first. Burn the Wyoming down, and then deal with the Karlsruhe. Because if you look at the minimap, the only remaining battleship on the enemy team, aside from the ones that he's seen in front of him, is the Miyogi, who is quite a distance away. So I think right here, if I was in the Yubari, I would try to isolate quickly the 2 easier to kill targets and get rid of them. I mean, I guess what I would have done differently, I think I might have tried to close in a little bit more with my stealth. Try to get closer first before opening fire and giving away my position. But again, in any of these situations, it's hard to say exactly what's the right thing to do just because everything you do could have had a completely different consequence. Get stuck on the island a little bit, not necessarily the best thing, and I don't think that was fully intentional. Sometimes you do accidentally get trapped on little sort of protruding bits of land. Still, landing good hits on the Karlsruhe, doing good damage, and that's, like I said, the big improvement to the Yubaris. The guns are now very, very much usable. Enemy carrier pops up right in front of FB 2000. And, oh boy. Take a look at the name on that carrier. The username is a wrong experiment. And pretty sure a carrier charging down a cruiser is considered not the best thing to do in the game. So this poor Hosho is pretty much going to get wrecked here. Again, one thing for you to note, FB 2000, just a little thing. If you're fighting a carrier and the carrier is this close to you, one of the things you could do is actually use armor piercing. Don't use high explosive. High explosive, you're still not going to do max damage, but with armor piercing, if you can land citadels, you very, very quickly are going to be able to wipe a carrier off the map. So something to keep in mind in the future because the damage is much, much more consistent. Hey, look, the carrier actually knocked out his engine. Oh, Hosho secondaries. Hosho secondary is OP? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I mean, you could have killed it a lot faster, I think, had you used AP instead of high explosive. Anyhow, the situation is as good as it possibly can be at this particular time. FP's team is about, approximately, I mean, 60 points off from the enemy team. And there's about 4.5 minutes left, so there's not really a lot of time, and time is going to become the enemy here. If FB tries to go for the enemy base, it's a guaranteed loss because the Miyogi on the enemy team is going to get onto FB's cap faster than he can get over to their cap. So that's probably pretty much a no-go. He could try to kill off the enemy ships, but it will require sort of fast, decisive action. And so the ideal target first would actually be that Miyogi. Wyoming's a bit far away, and that Wyoming is a dangerous target, and you really need to catch the Wyoming in an awkward position in order to kill him. So I think the Miyogi is a good target to try to kill off first. Maybe coordinating with his own CV is probably the best thing to do. Just say, hey, try to bomb the Miyogi and tell me if you get flooding. Because if the Miyogi floods from torpedo bomber strike, and the CV does actually go after the Miyogi because it is the closest target, had the Miyogi flooded, it would have been easier for FB to try to kill that Miyogi off, because a combination of fire plus flooding from torpedoes might be enough to erase the Miyogi quickly. CV on FB's team does go for the torpedo bomber run and does actually hit a torpedo. Unsure, however, if any flooding occurred. Okay, so FB does what he can, starts opening fire with his forward guns. As you can tell, continuing to wiggle around just in case a battleship on the side does get a shot off. The Miyogi is actually quite smart here. Doesn't come around the island, turns back into the island using the island as cover, forcing FB to do, forcing him to basically chase. And chasing, not really the best thing to do because you're going to be exposing a broadside to a battleship, but luckily the battleship just somehow isn't paying attention to the Yubari, but does continue to go in the opposite direction away from cap. Now, having stepped on the cap for a little bit, even though they don't cap, it stretches the point lead. Not only that, but the enemy team has found FB's Langley, the carrier, and of course, yep, typically when battleships see Langleys, you don't really live all that long. With his team down approximately 200 points, things are pretty dire right now. And I'm not sure I would have played this much differently. He gets torpedoes on the Miyogi, and one of those torpedoes is going to hit for a pretty solid chunk of damage. It's going to cause flooding. It's going to be able to get fires. Miyogi's going to put it down. Of course, he's going to be able to burn the Miyogi down. I guess the only thing I might potentially have done a little bit differently is instead of running away from the cap and giving the enemy the freedom to just cap right away with their ships, I think I might have gone, instead of going north, I would have gone south instead. And I might have gone south and hoped that I could have killed the Karlsruhe. Because if I killed the Karlsruhe, I could play Ring Around the Rosie with the Mogami while continue to engage the Wyoming and hopefully be able to kill that Wyoming, because the Wyoming is pretty low. Like I said again, there is no perfect answer to a play. I could have done that and failed miserably, while it could be said that FB is doing the best that he could possibly do to maximize his damage output to keep his team in there as long as possible. Again, time is really going to be that enemy. He does actually burn this Miyogi down and does actually secure the kill. However, again, both enemy ships on the cap, stopping his team from gaining any points and stretching the enemy cap points out even more. With the Miyogi down, he still has to kill a Karlsruhe, and there just isn't really enough time. The only reason why I would have thought about going south is just looking at time. It was such a problem that I would have just tried to force some sort of decisive action, quickly torping things and just maybe be able to kill things that way. But still, considering the circumstances, I think FB 2000 did pretty well. Time being the enemy, because I think had he had it, I think maybe a couple more minutes, this battle I think could have still swung in his direction. The Karlsruhe was low, The enemy Wyoming was low, and with these new Yubari guns, you really can do very, very, very solid amounts of damage by just continuing to stay at range and landing sort of very accurate salvos. So I still think the battle could have swung in FB 2000's direction had he had another, let's say, 5 minutes. But of course, we only have 20-minute battles, and this does prove to be a loss. But FB 2000 manages 155,337 damage in Yubari, 216 hits, 3 torpedo hits, 15 fires set, 3 ships destroyed, 3 flooding, even 8 planes shot down. Really amazing credit gain, 410,000 from a tier 4 premium, very, very good. Confederate, high caliber, experience of 2,558, but check the base experience out, because that is what was impressive. Base experience score, get ready for this, 1,311. Take a look at the winning team now. Look at the winning team's highest experience. On the losing team, FP 2000 had the high experience of anybody in the game. So that was actually amazing to see. And of course, finally, take a look at all the damage. 77,000 from high explosive, 30,000 with torpedoes, 40,000 damage from fires, 5,000 damage from flooding. So huge amounts of damage all around. Only took in return 10,000 damage, which is okay. Anyways, folks, hopefully this has shown you what the Yubari could be capable of. And of course, now with the new upgrade modification, I would say if you see her in store and you would like her, she's a pretty solid tier 4 cruiser now. So go out and grab her. Aside from all that, I hope you have a good one. If you've got any questions, do make sure you leave those in the comment section below. Take care, have a good one, and I'll talk to all of you again soon.